Massacre. People around the country are left with a very disturbing question. Can a similar tragedy happen in my town? So just how prepared are local law enforcement agencies to ensure the safety of their citizens from another terror attack? Joining us now with the answer to that, Steve Rogers, retired lieutenant detective, formerly with the Nutley, New Jersey Police Department. What's the answer to that question, Rod? Steve?
Well, it can and it probably will. Now, as the suspect's wife was speaking, what was going through my mind was, she talked about how he was treating her, etc. But did anyone in the family see something that would lead them to believe that he was being radicalized, or at least that he was sympathizing with ISIS? It boils down to this: if you see something, say something. People are so concerned about being politically correct. They're so concerned about being stereotyped and labeled as whatever, Islamophobic, right, whatever they call it. They need to say something when they see something.
They do indeed, but let's assume that for whatever reason they don't. How proactive is local law enforcement in situations like this?
Well, I've got to tell you that when we talk about being proactive, it's difficult to say. I don't believe there's enough training on a local level for police officers to be as proactive as they should be. That goes back to what we've been talking about for months and perhaps years. Intelligence sharing. Local law enforcement needs to know from the federal authorities what's going on in their neighborhoods and their communities. I would say this, and I've said this. We say, you see something, say something. Well, after you say something and give that information to the local police, they need to know what to do with that information. And it's just not passing it up the chain of command. It's giving them the abilities and capabilities to take immediate action when they see what can be a danger, like a potential terrorist.
Well, we don't know for sure, but it's beginning to look like the FBI did not share the information they had about this guy with local law enforcement in Orlando, that they had interviewed him 3 times. And that he had made comments to coworkers about terrorist ties and about affiliations with a suicide bomber. And, if you were local law enforcement, would you really be angry that you didn't know that the FBI didn't tell you that?
Well, sure. If I was a police chief in Orlando, I'd be quite upset. But I'll tell you where I believe where the FBI dropped the ball. Look, they interviewed this guy. How was he able to get weapons? How was he able to get a security job? There's something called fingerprints. You print these people, and there's where you could put a stop to this immediately. Those prints will tell you, if it has the right narrative to it, not to give this individual or sell this individual any weapons or give him any type of job.
What if he has no criminal record? I mean, so fingerprints tell you things like the commission of crimes. But what if he hasn't actually committed any crimes?
There's where we have to change the rules of engagement. If you have a suspected terrorist, if they're on a terror watch list, if they're on your radar, then we're going to have to change the rules and at very least, be able to identify them in the event they go to look for weapons, etc.
Steve, I wanted to go back to this private security firm that he worked for. And in terms of background checks, speak to that again. You said that there was a possibility of using his fingerprints, and then also how he was able to purchase these guns, from what I understand, legally, one of which was the semi-automatic rifle.
Well, the FBI agent repeatedly said the case was closed. The case was closed. Well, they closed the case, but what they didn't do, in my view, and maybe they weren't able to do it because of the way the laws are, put this red flag up. You fingerprint these people, perhaps on the narrative, on that fingerprint kit or card or whatever they use these days. They could have said, this is a suspected terrorist. He's on a terror watch list. I think that would have been the red signal that would have said, this guy doesn't get a high security job. He doesn't get weapons, and he is continuously being watched. There's where the ball was dropped.
Well, and you and I were also discussing the YouTube videos put out by his father, which are anti-Pakistan videos, but where he speaks favorably about the Taliban. So that would not have come into play at all?
It should have. The totality of evidence, the totality of information that the FBI had, that our federal authorities had, should have put this guy as a high-level risk. And indeed, that would have probably put him in an atmosphere where they would have been a little bit more vigilant regarding his future.
All right, Steve Rogers, we will have you back. Don't go.